Hello and welcome to another Game Nexus arcade video. Today we're going to be taking a look at Tekken 4 on the System 246 arcade hardware. This of course is the test mode. You'll see over here it says System 246 test mode. TEF3 would be the USA version. Version D is the latest revision. I'm going to actually quickly pull the camera off the tripod and show you what we have going on the desk here. As you see here, that's the System 246. Currently it has the audio going down to the speakers, videos going over to the monitor over there, and then this wire here is connecting it to this JVS power supply from the Naomi. Here is the I/O board, which connects to the side with this ribbon cable, which I'm actually powering with this this arcade power supply. And of course I did a bit of a hack job just to get this game to work. For the sake of playing it and for the sake of this video. You'll see there is this red wire here and this yellow wire here, and they're going to the joystick inputs, which connect to the Neo Geo extension cable, because they need to connect to this amp connector here because it needs those for the kicks, and then of course the rest of the JAMA harness connects to the other controls. If you see over there, there's my video converter and JVS I/O, but they're not in use right now. But that's what we have going on here. And then, of course, that's all being displayed on the main monitor up at the front. So, one thing I just wanted to show you here. You'll notice how it says JVS status, and that's kind of grayed out. That's because there's no JVS board plugged in, so you can't do anything with that. But the good part here is all the stuff is controlled with the actual joystick controls, unlike Naomi, which had the test and service button, which you had to lean over and press. I heard you can actually connect something to that, so you didn't have to do that, but if we go into input test here, we can see that everything works. All of our directions are working. Button 3 and 4 are those ones from the kick harness. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the light here so everything is a bit more visible and it's not so bright. You'll see here. Button 1 and 2 are punch and kick, but the problem is that on the Neo Geo controller, button 1 and 2 are on the bottom, and button 3 and 4 are on the top, so you kind of have to get used to it being in reverse. But I'm going to go ahead and press button 1 and 2 to exit, and then we're going to get out of this and play some Tekken 4. It's going to do the not the optimum mode thing like it did in my other video, because the monitor expects like a certain mode, and right now when it's doing the startup, it outputs as 15 kilohertz, which this monitor cannot display. I've tuned the monitor a little bit so the image is better. I think in some of my older videos it didn't look as nice because I let it auto-tune it, so it probably cut off a little bit. So I very well may do like different videos of Soul Calibur 2 and Soul Calibur 3. And with those games I just connect the JVS I/O to the USB port on the front of the 246 and just connect it to the power supply so I don't have to run two power supplies. But with this one, since I don't have anything that wires up the 64-pin connector for the digital and the JVS I/O, other than the initial D harness, I'm just connecting it to their old thing, powering it with the JAMA. So let's get right into this. Normally there'd be that silly video where it says, where you see Heihachi throw Jin off the cliff, and then he sees him with his robotic eye and says, "How are you still alive?" And then of course Jin gets all mad and says he's going to take everything back. But I've turned that video off because when you're trying to run this game, it plays like every time after one of these silly little demos, and honestly, it just gets annoying since it's the same video every time. Let me just try to center this a little bit more. There we are. That looks pretty good, I hope. But let's get right into this, and you'll hear my commentary starting soon. I'll probably adjust the volume before we really start playing here. But here we go. And now, as you can see on the character select screen, there's all kinds of different characters. Quasi, there was Marduk, and of course Yoshimitsu. Now his default costume is this weird one where he looks like an insect, and he has like insect wings and everything. Round 1. I can honestly say I'm not really a fan of that one, so I usually press the D button. I'm not sure what it's mapped to, if it's left kick or right kick, but I think this costume, he looks more like a cyber samurai, and I think it's a much cooler costume. It's just weird that he's like so insect-like in that other one. But yeah, this is Tekken 4 on the Namco System 246, which was released in the year 2001. Now, the weird thing that this game did, that a lot of fighting games around the time did, was it got rid of characters like Eddie Gordo, and instead of having Eddie Gordo, of course, you have this Christine character. And I can honestly tell you, when it comes to fighting games, I'm not really a fan of that, when they say, oh, well, let's get rid of this character and put this character who's kind of like them in their place. I draw a parallel when it comes to Dead or Alive, because basically they tried to get rid of Bayman in favor of Leon, but what ended up happening is they actually ended up having both characters, but their movesets got varied a little bit, so there wasn't really a big thing with them being the same character. Now, one thing I definitely have to say about Law here is that in Tekken 4, for some reason, when you see his portrait there, he looks a lot like the WWF/WWE superstar Eddie Guerrero. I don't know why, but whenever I saw his portrait here in Tekken 4, I really thought that. But I guess maybe they're just trying to make him look tougher or something. I'm not sure what the whole thing was there, but yeah, I definitely think he looked a lot like Eddie Guerrero in this game. And it goes without saying, if you like Tekken and you like fighting games, you will love this game. It plays so smoothly, and of course, just like I had mentioned in my earlier arcade videos for the System 246, the game just looks so smooth, and the graphics just look so sharp compared to, like, if you were to play this on the PlayStation 2. Now, this is another, as I was saying it earlier, replacement character. Combat kind of replaces your Mokujin, Tekujin, or even Unknown, where basically every match he will imitate a different character. I believe in Tekken Tag Tournament, as opposed to this, kind of like how Edgemaster was in Soul Calibur. It wasn't every match, it was every round, whereas Combat only seems to imitate a character every match. So you'll have a good 2 rounds with, or 3 rounds, however your game's set up with, having the same character to play as. And just like I usually do in a lot of my arcade gameplays, I've cut out all the losses because in this game I'm actually playing through 2 different playthroughs of arcade mode. One with Yoshimitsu and the second with Combat. Because all the losses just would make this way too long, as it's fairly long already. And it just helps a little bit that get those added there. And now, one thing that was weird with this game, as opposed to Soul Calibur 2 and Soul Calibur 3 Arcade Edition, is that all of the graphics were just like way too bright. All the colors were oversaturated because the default setting was contrast at 120 and all 3 colors at 100. But I found that the game looks a lot better if I took contrast down to 80 and I took all 3 colors down to 60. Because the weird thing is, especially in the final match where you were facing Heihachi and he had his sumo wrestler diaper on, that's the only way I can really describe it. But anything that's like white like that ends up having like neon colors all over it. But once I made the adjustment and the game looks a lot better now, you don't have that problem.
You lose. Final round.
And now Steve here kind of is like the Tekken equivalent of Balrog, where he, or of course if you live in Japan it would be M. Bison, where he's like all punches, because if I recall correctly, in Street Fighter, Balrog has no kicks, but, although then again there's a kick, but Steve is just very punch heavy, and his punches are his best moves. Because I know at least in one of my combat matches, I actually end up playing as him. And if I recall correctly, when I actually tried to do kicks when I was combat as him, he didn't have any kicks, he just did this weird like shrugging motion. It was weird. Now this is one thing I always thought was actually kind of cool about Tekken, is they have Kuma and Panda, and then of course in later games there's the kangaroo and there's the velociraptor. But I always thought that was a really cool thing that they have the animal fighters. But I would imagine in real life, if you were like a real fighter and you were like, I'm going to do this fight, and then you find out you have to fight a grizzly bear or a big panda, I doubt you'd really be like into doing that match, because that would just be a really crazy thing. But as I was saying before, the arcade version of this game came out in July of 2001. In Japan, they had to wait until March 28th of 2002 to get their console version. Then, of course, in Europe and North America, it was September of 2002. September 13th in Europe and September 23rd in North America. Now, what it had said in one of the things here is that, of course, this is the 4th episode of the game, and it was the most advanced part of the series until, of course, this point. You eventually add Tekken 5 and Tekken 6, which added a bit more. Now, if you're not a real big Tekken fan, you may not know that this character here, I'm not exactly sure how you say his name. It's like Howoarang or something like that. But a lot of people couldn't say this character's name, so they ended up calling him like Bob, and that ended up being a thing that stuck. And then for some reason, Namco thought it'd be funny in Tekken 6 if they made a character named Bob, and he was this really big fat American guy, and he did like really cool, really quick kung fu moves. But I thought that was a hilarious thing, that basically this thing started by fans ended up actually being a thing in the game. I always love when the creators of a fighting game actually end up doing that, or even any game at all, where it's like this kind of like almost meme of the game, and it just becomes like a real thing in the game. And now I played a little bit as Nina, and I definitely have to say, compared to her Tekken Dark Resurrection or even Tekken 5 moveset, I don't like how she moves as well in this one, or even in Tekken 3 for that matter, but it could be possible I just need a bit more experience. One thing I thought was actually kind of cool is in Tekken 3, around running in the System 12 board, when you press start you get Anna Williams instead of Nina. So it's just a little extra thing, but you can't play as Anna Williams, I believe, until you unlock some of the other characters. But other than them having a slightly different voice and a different appearance, I believe they play exactly the same. Kind of like how you have Tiger instead of Eddie Gordo when you press start, I believe it was. Now, what would have happened right there had my camera battery not died is I would have ended up beating Nina, and then you would have had the big thing with Heihachi coming up in his sumo wrestler diaper with his cummerbund there. But yeah, sadly the battery actually ended up dying right there. And then what I did is I lost to Heihachi on purpose so that I could then get the video up and running again. But basically what you missed, which you'll see in the second gameplay with combat, is that Heihachi does this thing. He's like, let's see what you can do, and then he just kind of walks to the ring like a World Wrestling Federation type thing. But the only thing I found a little bit disappointing about this is the final match is Heihachi. It's not like Ogre or True Ogre or like some like really cool boss or something. I honestly found that a little bit disappointing, that it's just a regular character in the game. But now, similar to how Tekken Tag Tournament did it, through the credits here, it actually shows how you won each match. And I think that's a pretty cool thing. So you get to see kind of a replay. And of course, if you're like me and you have the System 246, the CD-ROM, the DVD-ROM drive moves a lot during this because it has to load the various parts. So like when it's actually doing the credits there on the freeze frame, it's actually loading the next scene and the next two characters, so you'll see the DVD-ROM drive flash an awful lot. Like right now it would be flashing an awful lot because it's just showing the credits, but it has to load the next scene. And my only guess is that the actual way that you win the match is stored in memory, so it actually has to just load like a very small file, but actually loading the stage is what loads off of the DVD. Because unlike Naomi 2 GD-ROM, which loads the whole game to the DIMM board and therefore there's not as much loading on the disk drive, Namco System 246 and 256 don't load into RAM. They actually load real-time off of the DVD-ROM. And that's another reason why I'm so surprised that there really isn't much loading at all. You'd expect it to be like a PlayStation 2 game where, as we all know, some of them could get pretty bad, where it would literally be like, I know in some of the earlier games it would literally be like up to a minute and a half to actually load a game, because the problem is you have this DVD-ROM technology, and a lot of game creators didn't realize how to take advantage of that, kind of like the early CD-ROM technology. So you'd have the either like horribly uncompressed files, because like they're going from CD to DVD and they were thinking, oh wow, we have all this room, it's so great, we can have uncompressed files, but then they didn't realize how long they would take to load. But my only guess is with the 246 here is they made the files very efficient on the disc. And what I was doing here is I was just showing you all the characters in the game, and it looks like somehow I missed out on Christy and Brian there. Brian Fury and Christy, whatever the hell her last name is. But as I was mentioning earlier in the video, combat here is just like Edgemaster or Charade, or of course Inferno from the first Soul Calibur game. Basically, it's just like a different character's moveset every match. And I remember when I was playing on the Tekken 3 board, the way that the character I really could tell with Mokujin the most was Gunjack, because he did that crazy thing with his arms where they shot like machine guns in the beginning, and that was very easy. And of course, like Christy or Eddie Gordo, is very easy to know that you're one of those characters because of the dancing ready stance. But a lot of them, I can honestly tell you, I don't really know what character I am unless there's certain key moves that the character does when I'm actually playing as him. Or if it's like, Yoshimitsu has to be the easiest one, because whenever any of the mimicking characters, such as Mokujin, Tekujin, Unknown does Yoshimitsu, they end up holding like some sort of sword or pipe or something, because it would just be weird without. Because just imagine if you saw combat here doing Yoshimitsu's moves and there was no sword, and like when the sword stabbing move happened, combat just stabbed him with nothing and it still had effect. But like, this is what I was mentioning earlier. I believe here I'm Steve, so it's just like a bunch of extreme punches, and as you can see, they're really strong punches. He's just one of those characters that I never played much as, and even though he's a kickboxer, Steve kind of reminds me of Brad Burns. Well, Brad Burns, who's the kickboxer from Tekken 4 Evolution.
Round 1.
And now here's our good friend that everyone likes to call Bob, who, as I had mentioned earlier, spawned that Bob character from Tekken 6, and who eventually became a character in Street Fighter Cross Tekken as well. And now I didn't lose all that much with Combat or Yoshimitsu, which, of course, the combat gameplay was quite surprising. because I expected that since I was doing like a random character each time, I would lose an awful lot. But it was really cool to do pretty well with combat, even though it was kind of a random character, which definitely has to definitely have to play to the amount of great characters in this game that I could actually just not really have all that much experience with them. And I think I only lost maybe 2 or 3 times as combat, whereas I tried some gameplay with some other characters earlier, and I ended up losing an awful lot, which was kind of sad. But one thing I thought was cool about combat, I don't know if you'll really notice it all that well in this gameplay, because the sad part is the camera doesn't capture the full definition of the System 246, but all the places where combat has joints, there's these little screws, and they actually spin around, which is actually a really nice little graphical thing. You see it a little better in the wind poses than you did in the actual gameplay, because he's moving around a bit too much in the gameplay. And now this had been after a couple losses. I had actually chosen a alternate combat costume, and it's definitely pretty cool to see that combat has different versions of himself, if you will. They're not really costumes as, like, you know, a regular character. They'd have a costume as just another outfit they're wearing, whereas combat, it's kind of like a whole, like, different battle chassis and the different way that he's put together. So you could go as far as to say it's not really a different costume for combat, it's a different combat. One thing I thought was weird is in Tekken Tag Tournament 2 for PlayStation 3, there was a mode where you actually have to, I think it was, you actually had to train combat. And I think it's that Violet guy who's the actual one who's like the guy saying, okay, now train my combat to do this. And it was a really weird mode. But that was like the major single player mode other than arcade mode in that game. And now if you heard like a very loud sound there, I actually had sneezed right in the near the camera, so it created a very loud sound. But you'll see here, as I was mentioning earlier, now combat is being Yoshimitsu, so you see he has that like weird non-plasma sword. It looks like it's just like a toy some kid would be playing with, whereas Yoshimitsu's sword usually looks like it's like a plasma sword. And if you would remember earlier when I was playing as Yoshimitsu, Nina was wearing her outfit, which was the one she has in Tekken 4/Dark Resurrection. And that's another thing to mention about, Tekken 5/Dark Resurrection. That's another thing to mention about Tekken 5. It doesn't run on Namco System 246, it runs on Namco System 256, which is an enhanced version of this hardware. It's kind of like a beefed up PlayStation 2. So that game actually has a bit better graphics. That's why that's one of the many games, kind of like Tekken 3, which is on Namco System 12, which is an enhanced PlayStation, where the arcade version is a lot better than the console version because it runs on more powerful hardware. They kind of had to dumb it down. But this game, I would say, other than it being able to run in full VGA resolution and actually looking a bit better than even the component output that the PlayStation 2 does, looks pretty close to the arcade, the home version. And now if you're wondering, the actual character I was trying to do a second gameplay of in this game was actually Ling Xiaoyu, but I just kept on losing too much, and I didn't get fully through, and the gameplay ended up being like more than 40 minutes long. Because I can honestly say, before really doing much of the gameplay here, I was a little bit out of practice with Tekken, so I wouldn't say necessarily I'm all that good or even a master or anything. So brushing up on Tekken helped a little bit. But she has two different costumes, her dress here, and then she has like this kind of like warm-up suit looking outfit. So that's definitely pretty cool. And if you didn't notice, I went back to the regular combat. I think I lost a match to Nina, and then I just went back to the regular combat here. And now here's that Violet guy. I believe he was the character who was the actual guy who did the story mode of Tekken Tag Tournament 2. And I remember him being like, "You have to help my combat." And it was just really weird. I definitely love how they do like the atmospheric smoke in some of these levels. It's definitely something that shows off the power of the hardware. A lot of times when you go ahead and take the console version, which may not have as beefy specs as the arcade version, a lot of that is like greatly reduced. It's usually not really clock speeds of processors, but let's say the arcade version might have more memory, and therefore a lot of this stuff can be done a lot better. Now, I can go on record and say I haven't played the console version of Tekken 4 in a while, and the main reason why I'm actually able to even do this gameplay is because of the way that I was able to wire up the Naomi and then the two arcade boards I have. And that way, and using that knowledge I gained from that, I was able to wire up the I.O. board for this. And as you saw at the beginning there, I just powered the I.O. board with the JAMA harness, and I used that new patch cable I have in order to power the system. And now here's your intro to the last fight. I think that's actually done in a full motion video, because I noticed when you looked really close at Heihachi, there was really like no jaggies at all on him. But I could be wrong. It could just be one of those things where if they only have one character on screen at any given time, they could devote more polygons to them, which you see a lot in games that have cutscenes where only, like, let's say one character is involved. But yeah, the thing that scared me the most when I played this for the first time, I was just like, why does Heihachi have to be wearing a sumo diaper? It just was a little bit scary that he couldn't be wearing more clothes. And a man of his age, you think he would know better. And I was actually surprised when I was playing this that I actually had beaten him there. But yeah, Tekken 4 for Namco System 246, definitely a great game. If you don't have the way to wire up JAMA controls, it may be a little bit hard to actually get this working. And as you saw earlier, I actually had to wire up those two wires to do the kick harness. I don't have the actual official kick harness for this like I do with the Namco System 11 and System 12. So I just basically made a little like hook with the wire and then just slid it onto the pin, and that actually works. Not really something you'd want to do if you had it on location as an arcade game, as, let's say, some kid kicks the cabinet and your wire slips off. But if you're just playing it at your desk like I am right now, it's not really a big deal, as it's only a signal cable. It's not like it's electric or something. But, yeah, as I was saying, definitely a great game for the system. It looks so sharp on the monitor, either the LCD or the CRT monitor, and it's definitely a great game for your System 246 collection. I'd highly recommend it for anyone who collects for the system. Well, this has been another Game Nexus arcade review, and I shall see you later. Bye.